Dobar dan i dobrodošli na ovaj panel koji je posvećen evropskoj budućnosti Srbije. Ja sam nekako očekivao da će ovde biti jedno 5000 sretnih građana ispred koji će da sa radošću skandiraju ovoj dobroj vesti, ali vidim da je ovako odziv solidan i uglavnom među mlađim svetom. Ja predlažem da mi ovaj panel držimo na engleskom s obzirom da imamo malo vremena, a da su pitanja, da imamo dosta pitanja i dosta sagovornika, pa u tom smislu bi bilo jednostavnije da pričamo na engleskom, a ko bude od sagovornika voleo da odgovara na svom maternjem jeziku, to je u redu i dobrodošli. Pa ja da predstavim sagovornike. Gospodin Peter Burkhardt, ambasador OSCE-a misije u Beogradu, je sa moje desne strane. Gospodin Hendrik von den Doel, ambasador Kraljevine Holandije u Beogradu, dobrodošli. Gospođa Nataša Vučković, članica delegacije Parlamentarne skupštine u Savetu Evrope, dobrodošli. Gospodin Frek Jan Mat, I hope I pronounced well, je ispred delegacije Evropske unije u Beogradu i, kako bi rekli Englezi, last but not the least, njena ekscelencija, ambasadorka Francuske u Beogradu, gospođa Christine Moreau. Shall we start with brief and sharp questions? We have 3 rounds of questions, and hopefully we will have some room for questions from the audience. So let's go with 2 warm-up questions. First one is, we are in the festive mood these days. What is, by your opinion, the single most important immediate positive effect of the opening of the chapters on Serbia and its citizens? So we can go in rounds. Maybe we can start with you, Your Excellency.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that the symbol is very important because we already had, of course, the decision of opening the negotiations, but now we are in a very matter-of-fact and concrete movement, which is the opening concretely of some chapters. In itself, it's a step forward. And I think that it is thus understood by the Serbian government and also the Serbian parliament and the Serbian people.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to comment on that question, please?
Yes, I think maybe it's good to shortly explain the methodology of accession negotiations. We are working with so-called opening and closing benchmarks, and whereas these opening benchmarks will usually be in the form of legislation having to be in place or action plans on different chapters of the EU acquis, I think the actual added value of negotiations is in the closing benchmarks, because there we will be actually looking at implementation, so making sure that candidate countries can implement these EU laws. And I think it's there that these negotiations really have the potential to lead to clearer, more transparent legal processes, strengthening of institutions, less political influence, strengthening of independent bodies, which I think in turn will also be very beneficial to the Serbian companies and citizens. And maybe just one short word on this other process, which is sometimes a bit forgotten, which is the stabilization and association process, which is captured by our agreement between the European Union and Serbia, which is actually already legally binding now. In the negotiations, essentially you have to live up to all the conditions at the end of the process, but under the Stabilization and Association Agreement, you already now have legally binding rules that, for example, competition rules, rules on customs, rules on intellectual property rights, but also in the future through gradual approximation, rules on consumer protection, standardization, they will all have to be aligned with the European Union. I think that is also really one of the benefits directly to be felt by citizens and companies.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I would like to speak in Serbian because I think that as a representative of citizens, actually, it's better. Dakle, otvaranje poglavlja je vrlo važan korak. Naravno, mislim da je dosta dugo čekan i da, bez obzira na to što smo ga čekali kao trenutak nešto ranije, da je ovaj trenutak izuzetno važan i da on, kao i u svim drugim situacijama u kojima smo do sad bili, kada je stvarana i kad smo dobijali pozitivnu ocenu, da tako kažemo, od Evropske unije za poteze i procese koje sprovodimo kod kuće, kao što je bilo od uvođenja bezviznog režima pa nadalje, do trenutka kad smo dobili status kandidata, to uvek podigne jedan stepen pozitivne energije i pozitivnog raspoloženja građana, otvaranje nekih novih perspektiva i očekivanja, što je uvek dobro. Za proces evropskih integracija od ključne važnosti da imamo interes i podršku građana za taj proces. Ono što je ovde ključno pitanje, ja bih se tu složila sa gospodinom Janmatom, na koji način će se zapravo formulisati reformski koraci, na koji način će oni biti komunicirani građanima i na koji način će reforme biti primenjivane. Za to je nešto što je za nas od ključnog značaja, da li će institucije raditi svoj posao ili će sve i dalje biti prepušteno jednoj amorfoj i dosta arbitrarnoj političkoj volji koja ima presuđujuće dejstvo u najvećem broju pitanja.
Thank you. I think you asked about the single most symbolic value of what happened. I think the single most symbolic value is that you are now really on the way. You are in the process. Two chapters have been opened. One of them extremely political, chapter 35, which will undoubtedly stay open for a number of years. The other one slightly more technical, I would imagine. But finally you are there, and the fact that we were able to open these two chapters shows, I think, to everybody, to the Serbian population in particular, shows to everybody that not only Serbia is serious about getting closer to the Union, but we as member states of the Union are serious in wanting Serbia to join the club. That has been doubted in the media here. I've noticed in the last months. Does Europe really want Serbia? Yes, Europe really wants Serbia, and the opening of the chapters is proof of that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, from OSCE perspective, for me, the most important is the perspective that soon the chapters 23 and 24 will be opened. So, reform of the justice, reform of the police, fight against corruption, protection of human rights. That's the areas we as the OSCE have been working with Serbia since 2001, and we are looking forward that these chapters will be opened. Opening of chapters means it's not about ticking the box. When you're waiting for the green light, or when you're waiting for opening of chapters, it's mostly about ticking the box. As my colleague from the European Union delegation mentioned, it's the start of real work that we are looking forward to.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burkhardt. I will have some particular questions for you later on, but in the meantime, we have His Excellency Mr. Axel Dittmann, the ambassador of Germany, who joined us. Welcome, and maybe you can join the club with the first question.
Question?
With the first answer to the question, yeah. Which was the immediate effects on the opening. What would be the immediate effects, positive effects on Serbia and its citizens of these latest EU events?
Well, I agree with much which has been said. I would like to join myself to this. I think the immediate effect is a very positive moment for Serbia, and the immediate effect is that it shows here to the people in Serbia that the EU perspective, the EU membership is a real thing. It is going to happen, and we have now gone from the preparatory phase to the real operational phase of the negotiations. I think it can give a lot of impetus, and I would also like to add that now we have to improve the dynamics, and we have to take full advantage of this opening of the two chapters, and I believe that there the two next chapters which will come are extremely important, like Mr. Burkhardt just said, 23 and 24, because this is really about what also has been said by representatives of the government. It's not a technical process which we will be going through now in the next years. It's really about modernizing and transforming the society. It is not technical ticking boxes. It is really about developing Serbia so it can then become a fully equal member in the club. We're looking forward to it. So I believe this is now a very, very positive signal, and the real work starts now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dittmann. I think then we can jointly conclude that the start of the process is the single most important effect in terms of attitude, the mood, optimism, and etc. Now, as every journey, it's a long way, and it's a long way until this journey is completed. The question for you all, being experienced in your field, what would be, on your opinion, the top challenge that Serbia is facing along this way? What would be the single top challenge that we might face along this way? Please go ahead. Whoever wants to start.
Okay. Well, it's difficult to mention one top single priority, but I think it's relatively easy to align your legislation. That's not the point. But the real challenge is in the implementation, and there, of course, already chapters 23 and 24 were mentioned. This is obvious. The rule of law chapters. Our methodology is that we start with them as one of the first chapters, so we hope also to be able to open them in the first half of next year. But that doesn't mean that there aren't challenges in the other 33 chapters that are remaining, and I would like to mention in particular two of them. One is, I think, a common area for all candidate member states, and that's the environment. There are substantial investments needed to live up to quality norms of the EU. I think it's already safe to say that this might be a chapter where there might be a transition period needed after membership. But then another chapter which is rather specific for Serbia is the chapter of competition, and especially from the state aid point of view. Serbia is providing a large amount of state aid, many subsidies, around equaling 2.7% of GDP, when in the EU the average is about 0.8. So you can imagine that it's substantial, it's distortive as well, and it's not always notified in advance to the Commission for State Aid Control. And this is really an issue, and it's also reflected in the fact that there will be 6 opening benchmarks for this chapter. So this is the chapter with by far the most opening benchmarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Janmat. I understand Ambassador Dittmann would like to add.
Just very briefly, I think the most challenging is, on a technical point of view, it is not just aligning the legislation, but then also implementing it. So it is really something to be then fully implemented in daily life. And then I think that the chapters 23 and 24 are extremely challenging, because this is really something which goes at the heart of the society. It's about issues like corruption, tackling corruption. It's about issues, full media freedom. It is about the fully effective judiciary. And these are things which are extremely important, both for the daily life and for the citizens. And it's also crucial then for making Serbia attractive for example, outside investment, etc. So I think this is really a crucial point.
Thank you. Mr. Burkhardt.
It's in line with what I said by my predecessors, but maybe with some other words. Prime Minister this morning said one of the top 3 challenges for next year is these 17 big enterprises. It's easier to create new institutions than to reform existing ones that we have seen over the last 15 years. It was pretty easy to establish new institutions like the Citizen Protector, Ombudsman, or the Commissioner for Protection of Data and Access to Data, Commissioner for Equality, and so forth. It's far more difficult to reform existing institutions. The judicial reform, which one can say failed to a certain extent, judicial reform of 2008, police reform, which to a certain extent never took place until now, and others. And the reform of these existing institutions, that's again also in line with what's needed in the economy. In the economy, the state has to get out of the economy. That's basically the heritage of the socialist past. Regarding the state institutions, in a broader sense, including judiciary and others, the challenge is to get the politics out of the state. So we need a depoliticization of the police. We need a full decoupling of politics from the judiciary, which needs an amendment of certain articles in the Constitution. And broadly, not a state institution, but playing a vital role for the function of the state, we need to decouple the media from politics. So that's the challenges, the key challenges over the next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Vučković was, and then Mr. Van den Doel.
Pa vidite, u Srbiji sve zavisi od političke volje. Kako će izgledati jedna institucija, gde će neko biti zaposlen, kako će izgledati neki zakon. Dakle, za nas je glavno pitanje kako ćemo učiniti da institucije postanu ono glavno središte odlučivanja o ključnim stvarima. Na jednom opštijem planu za mene je to pitanje na koji način ćemo mi vrednosti evropske primeniti u svakoj reformi, u svakoj instituciji, učiniti da one ne budu pominjane samo deklarativno, nego da one imaju svoju punu primenu u svakoj javnoj politici, u svakoj strategiji, u svakoj reformi i da na kraju krajeva budu primenjivane. Mi vidimo da imamo medijske zakone koji su usvojeni u skladu sa pozitivnim mišljenjem Evropske unije, ali s druge strane u praksi vidimo da se oni ne primenjuju. Imamo mnogo takvih zakona, oni se lako donose. Jedno je pitanje zakona koji su i reformi koje se donose na osnovu evropskog akija, ali postoje i oni zakoni koji se donose nezavisno od akija, a poznato je da vi naravno svaku vravariju možete obući u zakon. Dakle, vrlo je važno da te evropske vrednosti primenjujemo u svim tim segmentima i da one budu poštovane. Mislim da je drugi vrlo veliki izazov koji će imati Srbija na tom putu i usklađivanje naših očekivanja sa promenama koje se budu događale u Evropskoj uniji, s obzirom da nas očekuje dosta dugi niz godina u toku pregovaračkog procesa. I mislim da naravno usklađivanje spoljne politike, bezbednosne politike jeste u tom segmentu jedan od naših ključnih izazova.
I mean, the more you talk, ladies and gentlemen, the more concerned I become. So, Mr. Van den Doelen and Her Excellency Ambassador Moro.
I'm not going to solve your problems. I'm going to make I agree, obviously, with everything that has been said. You will not get much discussion in this panel because we seem to agree that implementation is key. Reforms are not done by action plans, strategies, and laws. It's about implementation. That's number one. Number two, I would say, and I agree with some of the colleagues, chapters 23 and 24 are absolutely crucial. We would like to open them as soon as possible. As you know, my country will take over the presidency of the Council of the European Union on the 1st of January. We would be very willing to work together with Serbia and together with the member states and the Commission to see whether we can open 23 and 24 at an intergovernmental conference in the first half of next year, possibly, hopefully, even in March already. But there, and for a number of reasons, this is important. The German ambassador said it. Rule of law obviously has an inherent value for people, freedom of expression, freedom of media, etc. But it also has direct influence on your economic growth possibilities, attracting investors, etc. A predictable business environment is key to anybody wanting to start doing business in Serbia. For that you need rule of law, so it's absolutely crucial. And I must say, although I've seen all the action plans and the opening benchmarks, etc., when I hear this week that in Parliament there are budget discussions going on, that the Office of the Prosecutor might face a budget cut of 30%, then I'm really a bit worried about how serious the reforms are being taken. But I think perhaps the single most challenge for this country and perhaps for existing member states as well is to get the message across what European Union means to people, means for development, for growth, etc. I'm pretty sure that there's a relatively small circle in Belgrade of well-educated experts and civil servants, and perhaps also in Novi Sad, who are really convinced about what Europe means. But this country is a lot bigger than that. And we have to, when I see opinion polls, recently there was one by Gallup again, where people are asked, without given prior information, people are asked which country or which group of countries is the biggest single supporter of Serbia, and EU comes out at number 2 or 3 and not at number 1. We have work ahead of us in terms of communication. That is a task for the Serbian authorities, it is a task for us as member states, it is a task for the European Commission. This is extremely important.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moreau.
Yes, well, of course, I agree with all that was said, and I think that it's a huge challenge to achieve those negotiations, because they touch different fields and they embrace all the life of the country on the legal, practical, economical, social level. I think that the key word maybe is not only implementation but also appropriation, because we cannot have a good implementation if from the start there is not the awareness that all those steps are taken not for to please anyone outside of the country, but to correspond to the wishes, the choices of the citizens of this country. So I know that there are some proceedings which include the civil society, but really I think that this involvement of civil society and of all the institutions and all the citizens very broadly must be included from the start and up to the implementation itself. And when we talk about implementation, we are also talking about the civil service, because they are the ones who prepare the texts of law and the bylaws, and then they are the ones who have to implement. And a track record has to involve also the civil servants, and this is why the reform of public administration is so crucial.
Thank you very much. We have to look at the strategy of the small, obviously small incremental steps. But I have one question for Mr. Janmat. I guess you are the person that can give us this little bit futuristic answer. Given all the circumstances, Serbia is performing well, meeting all the requirements, the negotiations go smooth. When is Serbia full member of EU?
That's not the first time I hear this being asked, yes, I'm afraid I have to give a very boring answer because, of course, that depends very much on the reform efforts of Serbia itself. I think if we look at Croatia, for example, this process from the opening of accession negotiations to Croatia becoming a member took about 8 years in total, including in those 8 years, let's say 1.5 years of ratification of the accession treaty by all the individual member states. But again, it's really a question of the reform effort that candidate countries put into it that will be the decisive factor.
Okay, I mean, being from a business background, I could imagine that every new accession should take shorter, actually, not longer. Because if we got, for instance, from Croatia, all the translations of the questionnaire, this simplifies in many ways the procedures, we know the obstacles, etc. But it seems that there is no any rule in that respect.
That's certainly a factor that can help, and I think it's very good that Serbia is cooperating, I think, in many areas with member states that have recently joined, and I think that's a very good strategy. On the other hand, the acquis communautaire, the legislative framework of the European Union, is also developing. So the legislation and standards that Serbia has to align with and to live up to are not the same as they were 10 years ago.
Thank you. I noticed Mr. Van den Dolbe would like to contribute to optimism of Serbian population.
Did it look like that? No, I just wanted to add to what Mr. Janmat says. Obviously, you're all aware that the President of the Commission, when this Commission took office, made a statement that there will be no enlargement for the coming 5 years. Now, this statement has, I think, mistakenly been understood as we're not going to do anything on enlargement for the coming 5 years. This is not true. We are working on enlargement, and the opening of the chapters for Serbia proves that. At the same time, I must admit, and there's nobody in the Serbian government who will disagree with this, that accession within the coming 5 years is illusory. I believe Prime Minister Vučić has said earlier this week that Serbia intends to have finished its part of the deal by the end of 2019. Well, that would nicely coincide with the process of getting a new commission in place in Brussels. But as far as optimism is concerned, I happen to be also ambassador to Montenegro. You know that Montenegro has opened 20 chapters by now, and next week we'll open 2 more, I believe. But there as well, it is not about, and that refers a bit to your comparison with Croatia, it is not about getting the whole acquis, which is like a couple of thousand pages, and publishing that in the official gazette and then you're in. It's about implementation and real reforms. I think, and you can take that as a stimulus perhaps, I think if Serbia really puts its mind to it, it can catch up with Montenegro, and the two of you can go in the same sort of pace.
Thank you very much. Let's heat up a little bit with the question that everybody is concerned about. Not to mention the paragraphs in the chapters, etc., because many people are not aware or even don't need to know about that. But let's see, how can you imagine the possibility that this process is completed in any other manner but the recognition of independence of Kosovo? Anyone can pick up the answer.
I think we have a joint negotiating framework from January 2014, and that negotiating framework is explicit and it says there should be a legally binding agreement on a full normalization of relations between Serbia and Kosovo, and it does not say their recognition of Kosovo. So now the big question will be, what will be this legally binding agreement? And I think this is part of the ongoing political dialogue, the ongoing normalization process. I think it's extremely positive that Serbian government has a few times very clearly said that it's fully committed to continuing this dialogue. I think now under the leadership of the European External Action Service, the High Representative, we have now to find a date for next meeting, and then they will define new topics. They have to be tackled. It is about implementing those agreements, fully implementing those agreements which have been already agreed upon between Belgrade and Pristina. And it will be then about defining new topics. Yeah? And I think this is the process which is now happening.
The access of sound equipment is so that's anybody else who would like to contribute?
Yes, I understand perfectly why you are asking the question, and I understand also that the question is constantly raised in the newspapers and in the comments, and it is legitimate. At the same time, I would like to stress that for the moment the question is open, and probably will remain so in the following years, and also that the accession depends very much on what we were describing previously, that is the adoption of the acquis communautaire and reforms in all fields of society. So we must not lose the view on these questions, because it's a full choice of society, of a model, and so it's very important that the Serbian citizens are conscious of this deep orientation, and that they work on these topics. And well, I think it's rather clear.
Thank you. These two comments are really helping a lot. I understand that there is one saying that human mind is not capable to predict change. A human mind can only predict continuity. Moving a little bit on challenging thinking questions, particularly that I see that there is a lot of younger audience here present. I have a question for you, Mr. Burkhardt, but not as a representative of the OSCE. I have a question for you as a Swiss citizen. I lived in Switzerland. I respect and admire that country for many reasons, mentioning also the Weberism a little bit earlier by someone. And my question for you is, by some strange coincidence, the Kingdom of Norway and Switzerland are both the most stable and economically the strongest countries in Europe, and they are both not members of the EU. Why Switzerland, one of the rare world's fairy tales, is not EU member?
First, comment on the Max Weber and Switzerland. Max Weber, yes, he was writing about the influence on Protestantism of economic growth. And in Switzerland, you even could make a distinction between Protestant regions and Catholic regions, which is no longer true, by the way. Fribourg is Catholic and far more prosperous than Bern, which is Protestant. But Max Weber is far more important about creating or the value of a rational bureaucracy. And then we come to the Ottoman Empire, and we come to the question of the public administration reform. So creating a public administration which is selected on rational, merit-based criteria, not on any political party affiliation or family affiliation. This is what Max Weber is about, far more than about Protestantic ethic. But the work ethic is an important element. Now, why Switzerland is not a member of the European Union? Because it would need a popular vote. According to our constitution, changes of the constitution and the membership in international security organization, that would also include NATO or European Union, would need a positive vote in a referendum, and all opinion polls show that this would be far from possible. The other question is why Swiss population rejects in all the opinion polls, and those parties who are strongly against adhesion to European Union have gotten far more strength in recent months and years. That's another question. It's not the fears, for instance, of immigration, which also plays a role in Switzerland. But Switzerland has a resident population of 20% foreigners. The key question is our political system, the way how our democratic system functions, and the understanding of the Swiss population is that there would be, or if Switzerland would become a European Union member, many of the political democratic institutions that Switzerland has at the moment would have to be reformed in a way that would be considered as in a lesser democratic direction. That's the opinion of people. The Swiss government many years ago asked for adhesion, accession.
You had a referendum, if I remember correctly.
That was not on membership. That was on the membership in the European Economic Area, which was rejected at that time. In fact, it was mostly rejected because just a few weeks or a few months before the referendum, the government just officially asked for opening or starting a membership, and that was kind of a reaction of the population. So for the economic space, possibly there would have been a possibility of a possible vote, but clearly at that time already, and it has even increased. The opposition towards a membership is, I do not know, far higher than 50%.
Thank you very much. Within that block, I see that you would like to contribute, but may I ask you a question that refers to Germany, so you can pack it all together, which is also to me very interesting, thinking of Germany. We often say, and many Serbians know that Serbia paid the highest price in the history for creation of Yugoslavia, and that we lost the most by its destruction. How loud are the voices in Germany who say that Germany is paying too high price for the membership in EU?
Thank you. I just wanted to make one short remark on Switzerland. It is true, it is not a member. But I think it's interesting that Switzerland has adopted almost the entire acquis of the European Union. So in a way, it is very much bound, but what then the EU members decide on many issues. But of course, it is always a very emotional question, EU membership. On the question that you just posed, well, if you look economically, we are a big contributor to the European Union, but many countries contribute, and I think you don't only have to look at the absolute number, but also then at the relative number. If you look at in comparison to the inhabitants, that is the one point. There are, of course, a number of discussions on the EU, not only in Germany, but also in Germany. We have had a huge, or quite a number of very big challenges. We had the questions on the euro. We have now the big discussion on migration. But I would say that in Germany, support for the EU is very strong, is very solid, and we know very well what the EU is for us. It has been the vehicle which brought us lasting peace with our neighbors. Very important. Has been the engine for the historic reconciliation with France in particular, I would say. Of course, also has been key for the development of the relations with the Netherlands. It's very important for this. And if we look now at the concrete cost-benefit analysis, I mean, we profit hugely from being a member, having the open borders, having the possibility for free trade and all of this. But it is true with the current challenges, there is a need for a good explanation of the EU every day, and like Henrik just said, it is not only a question here in Serbia to explain to the people what the EU really means. It's also an issue we face in the member states of the European Union every day.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask one more question, and then we open the discussion to the audience. Do we have organizers? How much time we have? Can someone wave with the timing? Okay, 2 more minutes. So then there is one cherry on the cake question, which is basically my favorite. I had a whole list of questions. 1 hour is not enough at all. We have to organize a longer discussion on this. But Mr. Van den Doel, the one question on Kingdom of the Netherlands. Denmark, Luxembourg, Belgium, Sweden, Spain, the UK, they're all EU members, while there are total 12 monarchies in Europe. Why? And you are starting the presiding next year, so I have a proposal for you. Why don't you add another chapter on the accession process? Instead of, for instance, conditioning Serbia on Kosovo, you should condition Serbia on becoming a monarchy, because we see that all the monarchies are much more economically prosperous than republics. Can you comment on this, please?
It's getting more and more interesting.
That's why I'm saying the time is short. So
that would be chapter 36 then, if I take it correctly. But there is no acquis on having a monarchy. And I must tell you, Ambassador Burkhardt just explained a bit about the intricate political system in Switzerland. Our system is a little bit intricate as well. I'm ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which actually consists of 4 countries. 3 of them are not members of the European Union. Having 4 countries, it means we have a land border with France. Having these 4 countries, it means Venezuela is a neighboring country to the Kingdom of the Netherlands. I happen to be ambassador for all 4 countries. My only disappointment is that my ministry has never decided to hold our yearly ambassadors conference in one of the other 3 instead of the European one, but perhaps that might be an idea. No, you know, every country has its own traditions and grows as it grows. We are a relatively young monarchy, to be quite honest. It is often said that if we would have a presidential system, that actually His Majesty King Willem-Alexander would stand a fairly good chance of being elected as president. Because the beauty of our system, I think, and that is the same as far as I can judge for the other monarchies in Europe, the beauty of our system is that the royal family stays away from politics. The king serves as a symbol for national unity. The king is there when this symbol is needed, whether it is for celebrating our yearly King's Day or whether it is in times of crisis and disaster. He will be there, and he cements the unity of the kingdom, and he has no role in politics. Now, obviously, if you would want to devise a presidential system, and they do exist, where the head of state also stays out of politics, that's completely up to you. We have a number of presidential systems in presidential constitutions in the European Union where the president indeed has no political role, but basically a symbolical role. We have a couple of member states where the president does not always stick to that symbolical role, if I may say so, but it is an option. But I would not go for a kingdom.
So
you had it in the past. I mean, you've had experiences with this.
thank you very much. That's I think it was enlightening for the audience to understand the blending, the beauty of the differences that exists in the European family, and we can turn to the audience.
Ok, prvo ćemo da pogledamo sada rezultate naše ankete koju ste popunjavali. Koje godine će Srbija ući u Evropsku uniju? Bilo je pitanje. Pre 2020. misli vas 2,4%, 2020. 22%, 2025. 39%, a posle 2025. 36,6%. Vas ne baš tako optimistično. Da li naši panelisti imaju neki komentar na ovo? This is the results of Anki. Do you have comment?
But that's more or less in line with explanations. That's. But I think Mr. Kekic had a question there, and.
Thank you. Very briefly, we know they say the EU moves and develops from one crisis to another, but at the moment it could be a perfect storm. Weak economies, refugees, rise of populism, Brexit risk, terrorism, dysfunctional Eurozone. So it's not totally fanciful to imagine that just won't survive. Notwithstanding the comment of the chairman, it's easier to predict continuity rather than change. Could each panelist put a probability on the EU still existing in 2025 when Serbia is just about to join? And don't say 100%.
Dobro, da li imamo neka pitanja za naše paneliste iz publike? Na osnovu svega ovoga što smo čuli, izvolite.
I hope that you expected answers. Sorry.
Yes, I do.
Oh yes, sorry.
So.
But he didn't say.
So, if someone would like to pick the question, Ms. Moreau.
Yes, well,
Ms. Vučković.
I'm sorry if I disappoint the gentleman, but I would say there is 100% probability that the EU is still there in 2025. But the question is which EU? Because of course there are new challenges, there are new questions open, and there are more and more members also, and so the question is which discussions may happen till then about the topics which are faced by the EU, more integration in some fields, less integration in some other fields, reinforced cooperations, and so on.
Thank you, Ms. Vučković.
Well, yes, as I said, I think that Serbia would have to align its expectations also with the changes that will actually be happening in the European Union. We now have the crisis in the European Union, but in my opinion, it is not the same crisis as the European Union faced before, because now you have actually the change that all previous reforms led to the strengthening of the European Commission. And now we have a process which is actually contrary to the treaties, that is actually the strengthening of the European Council and the strengthening of the national policies through national states in the European Union. And that is to see how it's going to actually evolve in the European Union and what is going to be the process that will lead to further changes in the European Union. And I think that we should really follow and participate as far as we can as not member state in these debates and really be well informed and align our expectations to what is to be seen.
We had here.
Yeah, it will not surprise you that I will basically echo the French ambassador. The three bilateral ambassadors here all are ambassadors of countries that were the original founders of the Union in the 1950s, based a bit or modeled a bit on how we worked together in the Benelux at that moment. I was not there in the 1950s, I can assure you, but I started working on European affairs in the early 90s in Brussels. We were talking about the European communities then. Then we had Maastricht, Amsterdam, Lisbon, etc., etc. The animal doesn't look at all anymore like it was thought of. We had the whole discussions about the finalité of the European Union. We chose not to have those discussions anymore because it is ever evolving and ever changing, which is part of the beauty as well. I remember I was working in Warsaw in 2004 when the big wave of enlargement happened. And all of us from the old 15 at that moment, all of us were a bit shocked in a way, well, shocked, happily surprised, however you want to call it, the next morning waking up and seeing that the Union had drastically changed, and it will continue to change, which is the beauty of the project. It is very much work in progress. So I would go for 100% as well.
You wanted to comment as well?
First, I join myself to the percentage. But what I would also like to do is to make a very short reaction to some of the elements. You say, okay, it's a perfect storm, dysfunctional Eurozone, weak economy. I think that is too easy to just say. It's a bit, I find it too much of a soundbite. If you look at the Eurozone, yes, there were very big challenges, but the Eurozone has taken very, very far-reaching measures. We have created a banking union. We have created a European stability mechanism. I think it has 750 billion euro. I mean, that is a massive development. If you look at the question weak economy, I mean, now we have the European Council. One element of the European Council will be continuing to strengthen the internal market, and many things are going on there. If we look at the question of migration, huge challenge now, but we are working hard. The Commission has made a very far-reaching proposal on strengthening Frontex. So I would say, yes, challenges, but I wouldn't be so to say there's a bleak situation we are in. It is just a difficult world we're all living in, and we are trying to confront these things together. The question of the European Council, for example, yes, it is a strong thing, very important. On the other hand, and it has been important to be able to steer the European Union. At the other hand, we have now a European Commission President, which has been elected very much by the European Parliament. So I would say, if you look behind the grim assessment you read often in the paper, and you look at the individual elements, you see that quite a lot is happening, and very far-reaching steps are happening within the European Union.
So there is no need to worry, Mr. Kekic, on return on investment, because what you have parked in the pocket is that Serbia is a part of Europe now. So nobody can, the guaranteed fact is that we are a member of Europe. But whether we will be a member of EU and under what terms and conditions, it will remains to be seen.
Okay. Pitanja još, izvolite.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Milena Mijailovic. I'm a student of FEFA here in Belgrade. And my question is, well, someone mentioned that the EU wants Serbia. And although I can see clearly the benefits, but also the side effects of Serbia becoming a member of EU, from our point of view, why does the EU want us? Because the history has shown that former Yugoslavia was so close to the membership at the time. And even though I would like to leave the politics behind, as you all said today, I'm not convinced that politics can be left aside in this matter. So why does the EU want Serbia? Thank you.
Maybe EU delegation is the right address, the right door to knock on that.
Yes. Well, I think it's definitely true that we would like to have Serbia join the European Union, precisely because of the history, I would say, to avoid conflicts from the past. And I think it's not for nothing that the EU has been given some years ago also the Nobel Peace Prize. I think if you look at the situation which we are in Europe, that between countries of the European Union there has been no armed conflicts actually since the beginning of the EU, it speaks for itself that it has a very stabilizing and pacifying influence, and I think that is actually the main reason why we would like to have also the whole of the Western Balkans, as we firmly committed to eventually in the European Union.
Još neko pitanje?
Imamo.
Ok, odgovor.
Just to add to the answer, you mentioned Norway and Switzerland earlier. Norway and Switzerland are very welcome to join the EU, but if they choose not to, it's fine as well. What we are interested in is having stable, prosperous democracies in our region, in our border. Switzerland and Norway have been able to reach that state without joining the Union. But we have been seeing in Central Europe, in the big enlargement wave in 2004, which I mentioned earlier, that membership or the accession process, let's say, to the European Union is the guarantee for bringing about reforms which make these countries into stable, prosperous, trustworthy democracies. So I would say our goal, and also Serbia's goal, I would imagine, is not, the final goal is not to be member of the Union, but to be a society which could be member of the Union.
Exactly. That's nicely put. Do we have
someone else to answer? One more question, još neko pitanje? Evo imamo sa Twittera.
Your Excellencies, dear guests, there's pretty much the same question that I received from Twitter. We're talking about, all the time we're talking about the dates, and we're bidding about the dates, the years, 2020, 2025, something like that. And our people who discuss on Twitter don't think it's very important. They think that the acquis communautaire is very important, that applying all the laws and living in a prosperous country that is in conformity with the EU standards, like Switzerland, like Iceland, like Norway, is much more important than a formal accession, a formal membership, because lots of other countries like Bulgaria, Romania, Croatia, etc., just were formally adopted, but have not changed much. You know, do you agree with this opinion that I got?
Imate pitanje posebno za nekoga ili za sve?
No, for everybody.
For everybody question.
Well, I would say that for Serbia it is very, very important that we stick to that objective to become a member of the European Union, because it is the membership, actually, and the perspective of membership that creates that transformational framework, which is important, and then is kind of a guarantee that all the reforms and modernization of state, economy, and society would be implemented in real practice. Otherwise, I think that we would make the whole process much more relative and soften it, if I may say so.
I fully agree with this comment, and I think that I mean the European Union is a union of values where it's not just where we meet for economic exchange, and it is really based on common values. And what we are having here in this accession process is as I said at the beginning, is really a question of modernization and transformation of the society. So it is extremely important, and I think also on the last question, I think one look at the map shows me, I mean, it might be a bit too simplistic, that Serbia is in the middle of the European Union, surrounded by European Union members. Serbia has shown in the whole handling of the refugee crisis that it is really acting according to our common values, and so I think it just makes a lot of sense to work very hard on this accession process, and we really want to have Serbia as a member of the European Union.
As I said, the OSCE has worked with Serbia over 15 years now in the areas that I mentioned: rule of law, democracy, human rights, police, and others. It's very difficult to carry out reforms if you do not have a referential framework. The European Union accession, and I very much agree with you and also with you on that, the European Union accession provides this framework. Without such a framework, carrying out reforms is very, very difficult. If you have very preferential conditions like Switzerland, for many reasons, historical and economical and other reasons, Switzerland was able to undergo reforms on their own to a large extent. And even in the case of Switzerland, Ambassador Dietmund mentioned, we have taken over basically the whole acquis. So without this framework, I find it would be almost impossible for Serbia really to carry out this reform. So this is a very beneficial framework. But a word of warning: the European access it doesn't provide copy-paste models. So Serbia has to find their own model, which is in line with this frame. But Serbia has in all areas to develop their own solution. It's not something that you can just ask Brussels and then you can get a model judiciary, and then you put here the judiciary provided by Brussels. You have to develop an own judiciary which is in line with the framework, and that's true for all the other areas. Thank you.
Well, this is an excellent conclusion that you just gave, and I think we exceeded time by 20 minutes, and we should maybe close and carry on. Thank you very much for being our guests today, and I think you contributed to understanding of the topic. Thank you.